The dawn was like rust, a cold orange corrosion settling upon the bronze rails of the chariot. Copreus was shouting something about the king's will, but his voice was merely the buzzing of a persistent fly near my ear. What mattered was different. The stiffness in my back after a night spent on a lion's pelt, and the scent of the damp earth beneath the horse's hooves. I remember Iolaus's gaze that morning. It wasn't the look of a servant or a mere squire. There was something desperate in it, as if he were trying to catch hold of the remnants of our shared reality. "This time I hope you'll take me with you," he said, and I felt his voice vibrate in the cold air. "We'll go there in the chariot. I will be your driver. I'll hold the horses while you hold destiny by the throat." I looked at his hands. They did not yet know the true stench of Lerna. "Agreed," I replied, feeling the heavy lion skin press down on my shoulders. "But on one condition. You will be a spectator only. I face the Hydra man to man. At the time, it seemed fair. I wanted to keep him clean. I didn't know then that in such battles there are no spectators. Everyone who breathes that mist becomes part of the slaughter." We rode on. The wheels bit into the road, and every jolt echoed in my spine as a short, dry ache. Iolaus was silent. His fingers, gripping the reins, had turned white at the knuckles. He was afraid. I was afraid too, but my fear was different. It was heavy like a cast-iron ingot in the pit of my stomach. "Lerna, it is not just water. It is rot that has taken the shape of space. The air there is thick. You don't breathe it. You swallow it like warm slime. It smells of old death, of sodden reeds, and a certain sweetness that makes you gag. The mud squelches beneath your feet as if the marsh is trying to say something with its toothless mouth." Silence. A silence so loud you begin to hear the movement of your own blood in your temples. I loosed the first arrow. The pitch on its tip crackled. The flame seemed pale and out of place in this gray haze. Then a second, a third, and then it stirred. The sound of the Hydra emerging from the quagmire is the sound of wet canvas being torn, a giant, infinite canvas. It didn't crawl out, it squeezed itself from the swamp like black bile from a wound. 10 necks, 10 long, wet stalks ending in blind, ferocious muzzles. The first blow struck the shield. The impact was so great my teeth slammed together, and the taste of iron filled my mouth. Blood. I had bitten my tongue. The ringing in my ears grew high and thin, like the whistle of an arrow that will never land. Exhale. The sword felt impossibly heavy. It didn't slice, it hacked a path through a meaty, slippery resistance. The first head fell into the muck with a wet thud. Black blood splattered onto the lion skin, and I felt it sear even through the beast's thick hide. It smelled of copper and old entrails. And that was when time broke. The seconds stretched out, turning to resin. I saw a blister swell where the severed stump had been. 1, 2. They burst, releasing new muzzles, younger, faster. Their eyes were like glass beads, reflecting nothing but my own exhaustion. Each new maw spewed a yellowish gas that choked the lungs. My throat went into spasms. I hacked again. My forearms began to tremble, not the tremor of cold, but an internal tearing of fibers where the hand ceases to belong to you and becomes merely an extension of the metal. Slippery necks coiled around my torso. The lion skin saved me from the teeth, but I heard my own ribs creak under that cold, reinforced pressure. The Hydra was cold, deathly cold, like ice that has lain under a layer of mulch for 1,000 years. Strike, swing, recoil. The mud sucked at my feet. My left sandal had long since vanished into the mire. My toes felt the cold, greasy substance seeping between them. Every step cost an unthinkable effort. Greasy sweat mingled with swamp filth, stinging my eyes. The world turned murky, a blur of yellow and brown. And then, that crab, a small, senseless creature, The pain in my heel was sudden and absurd, as if the earth itself had decided to sting me. I nearly laughed. It was so lopsided, so treacherous. A titanic struggle and the claw of a petty thing. I crushed it with my other heel, feeling its shell pop through the sole. The crunch was dry and short, like the sound of a twig snapping in winter. "Iolas!" My voice was a rasp, barely forced from a throat clogged with dust and toxic vapors. The vow of the spectator crumbled under the weight of the first real agony. Iolaus didn't just help. He brought fire. When the torch touched the first neck, there was a hiss like a scream. The smell of charred, rotten meat cut through the stench of the bog. It was the smell of the end. I saw the scorched flesh contract, turning black, sealing off life. The head stopped growing, but blood continued to pulse from the stumps, drenching my knees in a hot, thick current. We worked like a synchronized machine. I hacked. He cauterized. Hack, sear. The world narrowed to a single motion. I no longer saw the Hydra as a living thing. It was a wall that had to be dismantled brick by brick. My lungs burned. Every breath was a mouthful of glowing sand. My eyes stung from the acrid smoke of the torch and the poisonous blood. Every heartbeat throbbed in my fingertips. How many were left? 3, 5. At some point, I stopped counting. I simply saw a neck, and I struck. My arm no longer ached. It had gone numb. My body had become a mechanism moving on inertia. The emptiness in my head was absolute. No thoughts of glory, no thoughts of Eurystheus. Only the rhythm, the crunch of vertebrae, the hiss of fire, my own wheezing. The last head was the hardest. It would not yield. It looked at me with such hatred that I felt it knew something about me that I didn't know myself. Its eyes were not animal. Within them burned an ancient cold fury. When it finally parted from the body, I felt no relief, only a weariness so deep I wanted to collapse beside that fleshy mound and never get up. The head in the mud still worked its jaws. Its fading eyes continued to track me through the veil of filth. I carried them all out, one by one. I dragged those slippery, heavy remains through the muck, my fingers sliding over cold scales. I buried them deep, very deep. I placed a massive stone on top. I wanted the earth to swallow this shame, this pain, this endless stench. And then, the arrows. I remember dipping the tips into a black pool of blood. It was thick, like tar. I saw my reflection in that liquid, a distorted face masked in dust, soot, and a life that wasn't mine. Now my weapons didn't just kill. They carried Lerna with them. They carried this rot. Every arrow became a curse waiting its turn in the quiver. The road back was slow. The horse's hooves now sounded soft against the rain-soaked earth. The sun was setting, but its light seemed artificial to me now, like a painted canvas. Iolaus remained silent for a long time, staring at his scorched hands. Then he turned to me. His face was pale, his eyes too wide. "Will you not grow proud, Heracles?" he asked, his voice trembling like a taut sinew. "Victory over such a beast, it can blind a man. My father and your grandsire, Perseus, always said, 'Fear not the enemy. Fear what you feel when the enemy falls.' He said mortals perish not only from a lack of strength, but from a surplus of it. When there is too much strength, it begins to burn a man out from the inside, leaving only a shell." I looked at him. My hands were coated in a dry, black crust. "A surplus of strength," I laughed. It was a short, bloodless sound that held nothing but exhaustion. "Look at me, Iolaus. Where do you see strength? I feel like a hollow jar that's been rolled in filth. Strength is not something in me. Strength is something that passed through me and moved on, breaking everything living along the way." He wanted to protest, opened his mouth but said nothing. He saw my eyes. There was no pride in them. Perseus knew how to cut off the Gorgon's head, I continued, looking into the distance where the sky was turning purple. But did he know how to wash the smell of it from his hands? Mortals die of strength because they are only clay, and clay shatters if you pour molten gold into it. I am not proud. I am just tired of being the clay. I felt the Hydra's blood drying on my skin. It tightened, cracked, turned into a thin black rind. I knew I would wash it off, but I also knew the scent of Lerna would stay in my nostrils forever. It had become my own scent. Mortals die of strength. Perhaps. But sometimes they simply become part of it. Part of the beast they have just killed. My hands were still shaking. It wasn't from fear or weariness. It was the sensation that something inside me had also been seared by the fire, and nothing will grow there now. Only a flat, black wasteland. We rode toward Mycenae. The sun finally slipped below the horizon, leaving behind the cold ash of evening. Lerna hadn't ended. It had simply moved into my memory. Now I am the marsh myself, where something has settled and lies in wait. Can I ever wipe this metallic taste from my tongue? Unlikely. It is part of my voice now, part of every arrow in my quiver. When I shoot next time, I will know. I am not killing with wood and iron. I am killing with Lerna. The world grew quiet again, only the creak of wheels and Iolaus's soft breathing beside me. He thinks we won. I only feel the cold rising from my feet, the cold of swamp water that will never dry, no matter how many suns rise over this cursed land. Only darkness ahead and the rusty glint of bronze in the last rays of the day.